Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. This is Maverick Voices, and I'm Patrick. Maverick Voices is the podcast for you, our MTC community, to share your stories and your journey to MTC. This week, in our season finale, we are talking to not a student, but one of our academic advisors, Rachel. She shares her story of how she came to MTC, and it's a unique journey that I think that you all will enjoy listening to. So sit back and relax for this week's episode of Maverick Voices. I'm Patrick Bennett, host of the Maverick Voices podcast. I'm excited. Today we are here with Rachel Reed, an academic advisor in the School of English and Humanities, which is dear to my heart as I used to teach public speaking out of that School of English and Humanities. So I'm very excited to talk to her about all things MTC as well as her journey to Midlands Technical College. But first off, Rachel, how are you doing today? As we record this is a Friday, so I know that is Fridays is ready for the weekends. Well, how are you doing today?
I'm feeling good, feeling good. Yes, I am ready for to rest this weekend, but I'm feeling great. How are you doing?
I am doing well. It's been a busy week. It's been a busy month as we record this particular
Oh,
episode. Next week, it's already into February. We're into this February. This is the shortest month, and it feels like it's going by so fast.
yeah.
January is so long. But thank you
Yeah,
for
January is
asking.
too long.
January felt really long. It felt like it would never end, and I am glad. And February goes so short, and then March comes, and then March never feels like it'll never end, even though our students get a spring break. So it's an interesting. This is how these months go. But Rachel, I
Mhm.
just want to get us started with this first question. Just tell us a bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, as you already said, my name is Rachel Reed. I'm an academic and career advisor. Here at MTC, I work primarily with the English and Humanities students here. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri, and born and raised there. Go Blues, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a sports person, but go Cards, whatever people say about the sports. And when I got a little older, I went to Missouri State University in Springfield, Missouri. So I moved a couple hours away from home, which was good for me. Still close. I could still go see mom on the weekend, but I was definitely ready to get away and kind of find myself and get involved and all that fun stuff. I studied wildlife biology at Missouri State, and I also minored in communication. So it was a lot, but it was a lot of fun. I'm really passionate about biology, natural history, all of that really nerdy stuff. And then, communication was kind of just a little something else to learn a lot about how to work with people and things like that. I did really blossom when I was in college. I had so much fun. I was very involved. So that's something I'm really passionate about and so thankful that I, took that step and got involved in all types of things. So I worked with orientation. And so this is at a 4-year college, so it's a little bit different than what we do at Midlands, but the orientation there, they're 2 days long and very involved, lots of activities, lots of hearing from different departments and things like that. So I really enjoyed that work. I'm still very close with my colleagues from that experience. I did that for 2 summers, and I really enjoyed that. Another thing I did was I taught Missouri State's version of what Midlands Tech has College 105, College 101, kind of that introduction to college, how to be a good college student class. I taught that when I was a student. I taught it alongside some faculty, so that was really fun, and I learned a lot from that experience. I had multiple jobs on campus. Orientation was one of them, but I also worked in the bookstore. Actually, this is a really fun thing. My first job ever was front desk at an advising office.
Oh
Uh,
wow, that's
yeah,
ironic.
I know. It is so ironic, and now I'm back doing it myself, so that's really cool. But the big thing I did was that I was a leader in what was called SAC, stand for Student Activities Council. So I was an event planner. I led I led a committee, that they would help me with certain things, and I was the live entertainment chair for 2 years. So I booked concerts, comedians. I created a drag queen bingo event that they're still doing every year, which feels good. Actually, that's the poster. If this video gets uploaded, But for people who are just listening, you can see the posters on my wall. I have some of my event posters on there. So that was so much fun, and I loved that. And that was
So
kind of
Rachel,
took up most of my time.
let me ask you this question. A couple
Mhm.
follow-ups. Like, well, who's the most famous person that you booked for Missouri State?
It's kind of a cross between T-Pain, and we also worked with Anthony Porowski, who is on the new version of Queer Eye, so he's also very popular. But T-Pain is probably the most famous person that I worked with.
Wow, that's wonderful.
That concert actually got canceled because it was in April 2020. I know.
Oh
It was
man.
so sad. I like I
Oh
me
man.
and I gotta shout out my co-chair, her name's Kendall, we did it together. We worked for a year on that, and then it got canceled, it was so sad. But we still worked with him, like, but lots of emails were sent and, it was booked. I have my ticket in a box in my closet, like, it was happening, but yeah, it did get canceled. But T-Pain probably most famous.
What's interesting, I got my master's degree in Carbondale, Illinois, which is about a couple hours from
I
St.
didn't
Louis.
know that.
Yeah, so I was a Saluki for a couple years living in Illinois. So here I heard Missouri State, and I was
And
like,
you were like,
that's
"Oh,
that's kind of close. It's kind
mhm,
of close to where I was at, in St.
cool."
Louis area. So it's interesting, I'm a Southern boy going to the Midwest in Carbondale. It was an interesting time in my life. I'll say that.
That's where I'm
Very-
at now, I guess.
yes,
You're
yes, you are right. Coming from Missouri down to Columbia, South Carolina, it's very interesting. So you said wildlife biology, and I know we may touch on a little bit later, but what kind of growing up like? Why wildlife biology?
Well, I actually started at college, as an undeclared student. I didn't have a major. And a lot of four-year universities have a program where you don't have to declare for a little while, like, you can kind of explore. So I was in that program, and that was really helpful to me. I'd love to work with exploratory students one day. If I hopefully, I'd love to stay at Midlands Tech forever, but if I'm in a position where I could work with those students, I would really enjoy it because I was one of them at one point. And so I remember I visited a zoo, which I still love to do, just, like, in my free time, like, that's something I really love, and I'm passionate about, and I love going to there. I was visiting a zoo in town, and I just got this feeling, I was like, "I wanna be here every day," and it just kinda clicked. So I changed my major to wildlife biology, which biology is something I'm passionate about. I've always been, like, a natural history nerd. I love dinosaurs, always have, still do. And it's something that's real. So I when I was exploratory, I took a marketing class just to, like, test the waters, I guess, sample some things, and I hated it. No hate to marketing, like, it's very important, but it just wasn't for me, like, I was like,
Yeah.
"This is all made up," like, I just felt like the business stuff, didn't appeal to me. So I found biology and I just love like, it was real and, like, there's no arguing with it, right? And I love animals, so that's kinda what led me to wildlife.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
So you was a wildlife biologist and communication. Those are very two vastly different things,
yeah.
but I can see how they kind of combine together. So let's kind of talk about, how did you end up, you got wildlife biology, you got communication, and now you're doing advising. So how
Mhm.
did you end up at MTC? Tell us a little about that journey of getting to our wonderful institution.
Well, I did work as a zookeeper for about a year and a half after college with that degree. I worked in Illinois, I worked in Decatur, Illinois, actually. I don't know if you're familiar with the area at all, but Decatur, Illinois, at a small zoo there, and I loved it very much. It was my favorite probably my favorite experience I've ever had, to be honest, and I've had, like, some really fun things, like, I worked with T-Pain, like, but that was probably my favorite. I loved it a lot, and I was there for about a year, and then I was offered a job at Riverbanks Zoo here in Columbia, and that's how I ended up down here. So when you are a zookeeper, like, you have to move around. There's only so many zoos in the world, in the country, and it's hard industry to get into. Like, it's kind of hard to get jobs in that industry. There's just not a lot of positions, they need a lot of experience, things like that. So my position at Riverbanks was kind of my dream job at the time.
Hmm.
It was I worked with the giraffes and the sea lions, some other things. It was a full-time role that those are hard to come by, especially with, like, as little experience that I had. So it was my dream role. I packed it up and I moved down here, just me and my cats, and moved to Columbia. So it's been a fun time. Now, most of what we'll talk about today is about I do obviously don't work at the zoo anymore.
Right.
And maybe we'll kind of go into that, like, at our next question, but I was at a point where I needed a new career path. The zoo did not work out, and that's kind of life, and that's what happens sometimes. I need a new career path, so I talked to some old colleagues of mine from Missouri State, like, people I was very close with from all the activities that I did at Missouri State, and I was like, "I don't know what to do, like, I'm feeling very lost. I don't have this career anymore that I thought that I was gonna do for the rest of my life, or until my back gave out because it's a very manual labor job, but whatever happened first." And they were like, "You are so good at working with students and all of the higher education stuff, working with people, like, you have to come back to that." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." Like, I was like, "Yeah, why?" Like, I was good at that, and it felt so good. And I have all these great references and connections and colleges. There's colleges everywhere. So I was like, I'm gonna do that. I applied for like to work at a vet's office. I have a biology degree, so I wanted
Right.
to use that, and I tried that and didn't go well, which sounds like scary and bad, but it's biology is a very serious thing. So any industry within biology, like, you have to have experience in those things, because you're either like working in like medical stuff or with animals, like lives are on the line, or research. Like, it's all stuff that you really have to have experience with. And I didn't have that because I was so dedicated to working with animals. So that's, kind of had to do a little change of plans, and that's fine. So I called those people, they encouraged me, and I was like, yeah, and I started applying to some colleges and ended up here at Midlands Tech after a couple months.
Oh, wonderful. You said a lot in there, and I want to follow up a little later, but I think we're going to talk about a little bit more in a little bit in our next question. So, what was that turning point or specific experiences that influenced you, to go from being in biology to doing what you're doing now?
Yes. So I was at Riverbanks and I was having a good time, but like I said earlier, I didn't have a lot of experience. So I was kind of surprised that they offered me that job, but they did. And I had a good time for a while, and then it kind of caught up to me, and I wasn't catching on very fast. Like, I also mentioned, I worked with the sea lions, and if anyone's been to Riverbanks, I'm sure you've caught the sea lion training show. That I was doing that. That's really hard. That is very hard to train a sea lion, and I didn't have any training experience. So I just kind of wasn't catching on. My anxiety got in my way too. That's something I've always struggled with, is anxiety. And so I was in this position where I'm trying so hard to do good at something that I've never done before. I'm not getting it fast enough. So then the anxiety comes in and makes it even worse. I can't think straight. I'm not myself. And it just kind of wasn't going well. And I was let go from the zoo. And that, as you can imagine, that was extremely hard. That was my dream job. That was when you work in a field like that, it becomes like your whole self. Like, my sense of self was like tied to that and that work that I was doing. It was so important to me. I had failed. That was probably the hardest part. And I don't beat myself up about it anymore, but it took some time. It was hard. And I was alone. I moved here completely alone, and I was going
Right.
through something really hard. I honestly, it's been a little over, I guess not quite a year now since I was let go. And I still kind of get emotional thinking about it because it just was something really hard that I had to go through. And that story might scare people, but it actually really inspires me with working with students that, yeah, you might be in a position where things don't go the way you planned. You can plan and plan and plan for your career, and it's just, not life. That's not how it's going to go. So be prepared, be prepared, like, resume wise. I was very involved. So I had like a lot of customer service, working with students, like all of that helped me get the job I'm at now. I have a lot of connections that helped me, but also being prepared emotionally is kind of something I might go into that later. Like, yeah, it was really hard, but I was just, I said, okay, we're just going to keep going. I think that's like the most important part. It's not let it like debilitate you.
So, where do you think
But
that came from? Where do you think that emotional perseverance that's required came from? Do you think it just came from your upbringing, or do you just think it came from other experiences where you were? Because that's a hard thing to go through, to lose that passionate in your dream. I can't even imagine losing that dream and coming back from that and recovering. So where did that come from, you think?
that's a good question. I do maybe like think it was probably just my upbringing. I don't know, like, I haven't thought about this a lot.
Mhm.
Right after I was let go, one of my coworkers reached out to me after a couple days to make sure I was doing okay, which I appreciated so much. And she said to me, I worked with these people for 4 months, so they got to know me very well. And she said to me, like, "You're such a resilient person. Like, I have no question that you'll be okay." And that meant so much to me to hear that right now. So apparently, one of my strengths is that I'm very resilient. I really think I get it from my dad. So shout out dad.
Yeah,
He
that's
always
wonderful.
taught me, like, I remember him literally saying to me once when I was a kid, he said, like, life doesn't stop for anything. And, so I think he just has that and he kind of instilled that in me. So thanks, dad. Love you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Shout out to dad. Shout out to
Yeah.
dad.
For sure.
Those are that's such an interesting thing. So, you know, I think your story is so be prepared is such an interesting thing, a
Mhm.
interesting thing we should think about in life, in general and for our students, like you may not so I'm thinking from like a student perspective, sometimes you may not do well as you expect in a class, right? And you may even get a D or you may have to withdraw. But I think that, you have to navigate through those lanes. And I think it's our jobs as educators is to help our students and navigate when those things that happen in life, but also those things
Yeah.
that happen in the classroom. So,
Yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead, Rachel.
I think that's very true. And that's a conversation I have a lot with students where things didn't go their way. Like in a class, for example, that was a great example. And I say this every time I say, okay, like we kind of talk about what went wrong so that we
Mhm.
can learn from that and do better next time. And I always say, like, okay, well, we're going to just move forward and do what we need to do. Take it again. Like, that sucks. Like, yeah, oh, we have to take a class again. That is not fun, but like, you got to do it. You'll be okay.
Yeah. So what attracted you to MTC though? So you said you applied to a lot of different places. You was a veteran bio assistant and a veteran assistant, I think you said. That
Yeah.
didn't work out. So what attracted you here to our college?
Yeah. So once I started applying to colleges, I did apply to quite a few. I even interviewed at my answer to this question is kind of a funny answer. What attracted you to MTC? My honest answer from the get-go is that there was a job opening.
I mean, that's honest. That's
Yeah.
honest.
You know
I
what I
get that. I feel the same way when I got hired at
Yeah.
MTC. I was looking for something and they
There was a
no
job.
job open. Ah, that's honest.
Yeah. So that's definitely, obviously where it started. But from there, I interviewed for actually multiple roles at MTC. First, I interviewed for something called a scheduling navigator, and they also work in the advising office, but they're not advisors. Their role is to help students create their class schedule. So, the advisor role is to like say what classes should you take and what order should you take them in to work towards graduation. But the scheduling navigators are kind of just on the ground, like they can help actually create your class schedule and getting registered. So at first, I interviewed for one of those positions, and I was offered the job, which is great. But I was talking to another school at the same time, and they were kind of like giving me these hints that they were going to hire me. So I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And so I reached out to the person who was going through hiring me for that role, and I was just honest with them. I was like, "Hey, I have this other maybe offer on the table. Like, can I have some time before I accept your offer?" Just it's the offer I was going to get at a different school. It was for a better role, so I kind of had to like balance that. And the person, I won't name any names because I didn't get anybody's permission to name them, but the person who was hiring me said, "Yeah, if I'm gonna be your supervisor for this role, like, I have to support you and I have to support your development, like, professional development. So that's fine. I'll give you some time." And we worked together to have, like, a deadline for me to, you know and so that was, like, my first indication that I really liked Midlands Tech because this person that I didn't have any ties to me other than that I was a prospective candidate, cared about me, and was
Mhm.
being so encouraging at the same time. Like, that meant so much to me. So what happened was never heard from that other college, but the date was coming that we had set for me to accept or deny my MTC offer. And like I said, the other school was like giving me all these hints that they were going to, but like, so I was very confident. I was feeling good. And it was a hard decision. And I decided to turn down MTC because I really thought I was going to get this other one. But as we all know, life kicks you when you're down.
Yeah, they didn't give you an
Sometimes.
offer.
And they didn't offer it to me. They said they were going to, but then, like, someone else said no because I didn't have enough experience, so it was kind of just like a paperwork thing. So I
Mm.
wasn't wrong necessarily to think that to feel confident, but, like, things happened and didn't go through. And then I had no job still, which that was tough too, like, last summer was rough. Anyway, but so I turned down that, still had no job. Then the person that I interviewed with and that I was talking with before at MTC called me a couple weeks later on my personal phone, like, out of the blue, and was like, "Are you still interested? Like, do you still need something?" And I was like, "Yes, actually." And she encouraged me to apply for an advisor role. Yeah, and the rest is history. So that is what attracted me to MTC, like, after the fact that there was a job opening. I was given so much support, so much understanding, so much encouragement from people who had no, like, need to show me that kindness, and they did, and they still do. I still feel that way. So that's kind of something I really love about MTC and saw early on.
It's so interesting how, you got rejected for a other job and then something else happened. It was really fortuitous that, that our connections, we saw something in you at MTC and that we wanted you to be a part of our team. And I want to shout academic advising.
Yeah. I
I
really
know
would like to shout out this person, but I didn't get her permission, so I won't.
I'm not gonna shout. I'm just gonna shout out people over there because I can say what I
Yeah.
want to say on my podcast in this podcast. So I want to shout out Gina, Katie, Tanisha, all the academic leadership over there and academic advising. Y'all are great and y'all are doing great things over there.
Mhm.
So go ahead, Rachel. You got something you want to add?
You did see that? You mentioned someone saw something in me, and that is definitely what happened, and I wanted to mention, like, I needed that so much. That was
Mm.
last summer was, like, the worst. Getting fired from the zoo was the worst thing that ever happened to me, for sure. Just emotionally, and I wanted to say this earlier, I have no beef with Riverbank Zoo. It's true, I don't have any beef. I'm still friends with all of those people. I see my boss, the person who was my boss at Riverbanks, I see them sometimes and I say hello, and they ask me how I'm doing, and they're so good to hear. They're so happy to hear that, like, I'm doing good at MTC. So, no beef, everything's great. But that doesn't change the fact that, like, it was hard on me. It was hard to go through that. And I mentioned this earlier, I really felt so down on myself, like, I had lost everything, and I it was because I wasn't good enough, and that just was the worst thing, and I feel great now, so we're good, but it was a hard summer, and so then this person at MTC saw something in me and was, like, pursuing me, like, "I want you to work for me," like, oh my gosh, that felt so good. So, shout out.
It feels good to be wanted, right? You
Yeah.
wanted in that
Oh,
someplace,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, Rachel, I got a question for you that's not on here, but how did you end up being the main poster child for our marketing? Like, did you just find like you just got like, I realized that you got here last summer. Now
Mhm.
you all on this marketing.
I know. Well, they keep asking me to do stuff for the social media. I think it's just 'cause I'm the youngest person here.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, "Sure." So I have been on the social media a little bit and done some videos and stuff. I enjoy it, like, it's fun. But really, I think they're like, "You're 24 years old. You know how to work Instagram, like, let's get you on here." And I just
You're the
keep saying
youth of
yes.
you're the youth of this, you know how to do this.
Yeah,
If we could do TikTok, we'd probably do TikTok.
yeah.
Um,
I don't use TikTok.
I don't use TikTok either personally. I
I
just
it destroys my brain, like, I can't do it. So if they ever ask me to do TikTok, I'm gonna be like, I don't really know." But our marketing team is so knowledgeable, so they can help me out there. But then the pictures of me all over campus, that is the main thing. I think it was just like a marketing and advising leadership combined idea that they wanted to get some advisors out on posters and stuff. And it's not just me, there is some other advisors that you can find.
I've seen Robert
Um,
and I think
yeah, Robert and David. So the director of advising, she just asked me if I would be interested, and I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And that was actually such an interesting, like, experience. I had to go to a studio. I There was hair and makeup, the whole thing. It was really fun.
do
Yeah,
people
so I don't
recognize
know.
you from that? Do people recognize you from
Yeah.
that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's people who already know me, like, they'll say it, but it has happened twice where random student on campus says to me, "Are you the girl on those posters?" I say, "Yes." So it has happened a couple times. Yep.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
So are there anything or specific goals or initiatives you're particularly passionate about? You can talk about MTC or just in general.
Well, I did already mention, like, natural history and all of that. That's never gonna leave me, that passion for that stuff. I do go to the zoo, like, I'm still into all of that. So that's a big part of who I am for sure. Like, I'm a bird watcher, and I'm always sharing little infographics on Facebook about environmental stuff, that's definitely the person that I am. But as for higher education, the things that I'm passionate about, I'll mention 3 things that I thought. First is, like, resources. I want to be really knowledgeable about, like, student resources and how students get them, what type of students go to what thing, all the details. I wanna be really knowledgeable about that so I can refer students to the right place. So, of course, we have tutoring, that's one I mentioned all the time. We have the Life Skills Center, which I think is really cool, like, I've never seen something like that at a college I've been to before. So our life skills center is really awesome. And just encouraging, like, talk to your professor, be open with your professor. They care about you and like they're most likely gonna be willing to work with you if something's going on. So that is like a student resource too. So that's something I'm really passionate about. And I have done a lot of work to like learn as much as I can about the resources here at MTC so I can pump out those recommendations for every student I meet with. That's something. Then something else is that I'm passionate about is getting involved. That's obvious why, that is the reason I have this job. It does require a degree to be an advisor, so I have that, but, like, most people study, like, communication itself, or they study psychology, so they know how to work with people, things like that. But I have a biology degree, so the fact that I was involved when I was a student is, the experience I needed to get this job, so get involved. It also just made me, like, a better person. I'll use orientation as an example. So I attended orientation, of course, like as a new student when I was 18, fresh out of high school, going to Missouri State. Go Bears, by the way. I wanted to say that. Go Bears. So, new student, I was in orientation. I was so nervous. I was excited, but like I was so nervous. I'm from a small town where there like was no opportunity for me to like get involved and like really be myself as a queer person. Of course, I'll mention that, but also just like I'm kind of silly, I don't know. I never felt like I could really be myself like in a small town environment. So
Mm.
I was excited to like go to college and like find all these opportunities and like really become the person I'm supposed to be. But I was also very nervous and small and like anxious. I couldn't speak in front of people, like all of that. I couldn't order my own food. Like I was such a nervous person. But just in general, like I never really felt like I could really be myself. I always felt uncomfortable growing up. And I think I just needed to like find my people and, get involved. Like I am a natural like leader, I guess. That feels silly to say that about myself, but I really like had this desire to like get involved and meet people and I couldn't do that back home. So I was excited to go to college, but I was very nervous, very anxious. I'm a very anxious person. I used to like not be able to order my own food. Like I was just very nervous all the time and like that's kind of the person I was. Just like a little baby. Like that's how I see myself, like 18 years old, just a little baby. I come back to orientation 2 years later as an orientation leader. I'm
Mm.
I'm confident. I'm I can talk to anyone about anything that they need. I can handle tough situations. I'm myself openly in all the ways that I can be. So getting involved did that for me. It just like it made me the person I am today. Also just made me like a good like employee. I know that sounds silly, but I guess like my soft skills were better, like customer service, talking to people, like, it helped me build those skills and gave me this job, like I said earlier. So getting involved, back to the question, getting involved is something I'm passionate about and I would like to encourage students to do. And we have opportunities here at MTC. Absolutely. We have a student advisory board, the esports club, even though that's like a niche club,
Yeah.
you're still gonna meet people and like you can still have a leadership position like within that and all of that. So getting involved is something I'm passionate about. That was a long story to answer that question, but it's okay.
So,
That's what podcasts are about, I guess.
well, yeah, we're just having a conversation. It's a long story. There was something I wanted to ask. It seems
Mhm.
like it's an observation for me is that your experience in that first 2 years was so vital for
Mm.
you as a person. And I think what I would hope and desire, and I'm just putting my spin on it, is that MTC can be a place that's similar
Yeah.
to help you explore and find yourself, for our students.
Right.
Those first 2 years. or 2.5 years that they're here. So I think, Rachel, that's something that I think people can take away a little bit from this.
Yeah.
I want to move on to a different question, though. It really relates to students. So, as an
Mhm.
academic advisor, how do you engage with students, and what's the most rewarding thing about interacting with students?
So the main way that I engage with students is through the advising appointments, and that does take up most of my day. So that's like what I'm doing is engaging with students all day, one on one, to talk about how classes are going, talk about what classes we should take next, make sure they're doing good, and all. So that's a half-hour conversation where I'm engaging with a student throughout the day. And of course, I do some other things like I think social media. I've done a little work with our social media. That's kind of part of that, you know, in kind of a different way. But that's the way I've engaged with students as well. So it's kind of just those conversations. I engage with them by trying to get to know them and get to know how they're doing. A lot of people can come to their advising appointment. They're feeling kind of guarded. They don't really want to open up to me, but I want to be like, no, like if you're not doing well, like you can tell me that. I want to know why, so that like we can have a conversation about how to be doing better. So that's kind of where my engagement comes in. The most rewarding thing about like my job and interacting with those students, a lot of times when they leave my office, I think they're feeling relieved. I've answered some questions that were confusing them, or given them a plan so that they know when they're going to graduate. And like they just come in feeling a bit confused and nervous, and a lot of times they leave feeling like they have a hold on things, they know what's going on, and they feel relieved, and that is really rewarding to me. I don't want my students walking around nervous all the time, like,
Mhm.
and not really understanding what's going on, because it's complicated, like, what classes do you have to take in order to graduate, like, that's complicated stuff for sure. So, it can be confusing. So, a lot of times students will tell me, like, "I feel so much better, thank you," and, like, that is just, like, the most rewarding thing. Like,
Mm.
"Good, that's what I want for you." I also think, like, using my experiences to help students is super rewarding, like getting fired from the zoo.
Yeah,
I
that's a
brought
that's
that
a
up.
that's a good experience to use.
Exactly, because students might be in my office scared to choose a major because what if it doesn't work out? And I can say, "Sometimes it doesn't work out, and that sucks. It sucks so bad, but then you just figure it out and you find something else and you'll be fine." Like, I am a living example that the worst case scenario can happen to you and you will be fine. So I love sharing that story, and it makes me feel like I didn't go through that for nothing, you know?
Right. Yeah, it helps you become a better person. So, with students, are there any memorable moments that kind of stick out with students? So, this far, I know you only worked there a couple months,
Yeah.
2 few months. Any memorable experiences that you can take from your students so far?
Yeah. The fact that I've only been here for a little while is actually part of my answer because I think those experiences will kind of come with time.
Mhm.
So there isn't like one that comes to mind, to be honest. But I will say I think they'll come with time. I'm really looking forward to seeing the first time that a student that I've worked with since the beginning graduate. I'm really looking forward to that. I think that's going to be really memorable, to quote the question. You know, because I've only been here a little over 6 months, and there's already a handful of students that I'm, like, really close with. They come to me a lot. I know they're gonna change the world one day. Like, I'm already building those relationships, so I can't wait for them to, like, move on to the next thing and be great. Like, I wanna see that. So that's gonna be memorable when that gets here. But something that happens every once in a while I'll mention is that's, like, memorable to me, and the question that you gave me, it left a lasting impact on me. It's probably the moments that students give me positive feedback that I'm doing good, and that
Oh,
sounds really silly
yeah.
because who doesn't like that? But I've had a really hard year professionally. So anytime a student is open to sharing with me that, like, I've helped them, first of all, that feels good because good, I'm glad that I've helped you. That's my job and that's what I want. That's what I'm here to do. But it really, like, settles my soul a little bit, like, "Okay, good.
Mm.
I'm glad to hear that I'm doing good." Like, that sounds really silly, but I appreciate hearing that from them a lot.
Yeah, I remember, when I used to be teaching and as a professor, when they say you're doing a great job,
Yeah.
I try to be modest about it and all that type of stuff. But, it's always great to get that positive
Yeah.
feedback to make you feel like you're in the right place, in the right space
Yeah.
and time.
Right. Right. And that's so prevalent in higher education. people care so much about you and how you're doing personally and professionally. Like, I felt that way when I was a student, and I feel that way now. Everybody just, like, cares about you, and that's such a beautiful thing.
So we kind of talked about those positives and the memorable things, but what's the most challenging thing in this college environment, and how have you overcome them? So working in college, what's the most challenging aspect of it?
I'm actually really battling this right now, so I don't this is on my mind recently, that this job can be very draining. I'm an introvert. A lot of advisors are, like, I'm definitely not the only one who has this experience. I'm an introvert. Being social can be really tiring to me, and that's what I'm doing all day. And not only being social, but having really important conversations. So I think the biggest challenge, and I'm really, like, kind of in the thick of it right now because February and March is such a busy time, like, I'm completely booked every day.
Right.
That's great because these are students getting advice early, and I love to see it. So that's a good thing, but it is kind of draining for me, and I leave at the end of the day like, "Oh my gosh." So I'm working to overcome them. What I know that, like, the busy period will be over soon, and that comforts me, so it makes it easier for me to keep pushing and continue to do my best in every appointment because I know, like, eventually there will be a lull and I can recover. But having a work-life balance is so important. So, yes, my day can be very draining, so my night, like, I have to turn it off. I'm not checking my email after 5 o'clock. I do not do that. Sorry, students. Sorry, not sorry, actually, because I am a person as well as your advisor, and, like, I have to turn it off and I have to go home and I have to relax so that I can do it again the next day. So having a work-life balance is really important to me, always has been, and I'm, you know, still practicing that, working on that. But it can be draining. And, I think the highs and lows of the school year are a big part of that. So how did you overcome them? I think there's just gonna be certain times in the year where it's harder, but it will be okay, and I will recover when it's not so busy. And with time, maybe I'll get better. I've only been here a couple months, so you know, maybe I need a full year to kind of get the hang of things. That's okay.
So how do you wind down? So how do you find a balance? What are some things that you do to wind down?
Well, I know what I enjoy, right? So I really enjoy, like, media. I enjoy TV and music and YouTube. I'm, like, a recent YouTube person. I was never so, there's certain shows I watch that feel very comforting to me, and I like to watch those. I also live with my mom. Shout out. She Like I said, I moved here alone, but she eventually came down with me, which I was so thankful for. Shout out mom and dad. Wow, I'm shouting out
Yeah.
everybody. Anyway, so I live with my mom. We're very close, and I love living with her. Like, love it. We're having a good time. I really love it because she makes me dinner every day.
I was about to say, that's the way you
Yeah,
can wind down with some
my
food. You
life
don't
is
have to worry
awesome.
about all that.
Yeah, my life is awesome. So, I have a meal with my best friend, who is my mom, and we watch a movie together, and that felt really good. I also sleep a lot. Like, I go to bed at like 8 PM. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know, but
You're already you're only 24. What you doing sleep so early? What time you wake up? 4 a.m.?
no, 6:30. Get ready
Wow,
for
you
work.
sleep 10 hours of
I
wow.
know. I don't know, but
I
it's what I
see.
need to do. And then, like, the weekends are really, like, I, like, have to set boundaries for my weekends. Like, I have to relax or I will, like, that's important to me. So, it's kind of like I think boundaries is a good word for, like, how I unwind is that, like, I had to put my foot down and be like, "I cannot do something crazy this weekend. Like, I need to relax." So knowing yourself and, like, knowing when to set those boundaries is important.
So what's your favorite TV show? Since you said, what's your favorite TV show to watch? I'm just
Okay.
curious.
Actually, my favorite TV show is Jurassic World: Camp Cretaceous.
Is that a that's an animated show, ain't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is a children's TV show about the aftermath of Jurassic World and some kids who had to stay on the island for a while, and it's so good. Like, yeah, it's for kids, but, like, a lot of times kids media is really enjoyable. Like, it's very simple, but,
Mhm.
like, compelling storylines. I think, like, Avatar: The Last Airbender is a really good example of that. Like, everybody loves that show. It's so good. And yeah, so Jurassic World: Camp Cretaceous, it's genuinely my favorite. New Girl was, like, my favorite for a long time, and it's still really up there. But I watched Jurassic World: Camp Cretaceous because 'cause I'm, like, into Jurassic stuff, like, the whole series, a dinosaur nerd, so what do you expect? And so I watched the show because, like, I wanna know the story and stuff, And I just got this feeling. I was like, I want to watch it again and again and again. Like it's so good. So that is my favorite show. That's
So are you
embarrassing.
new? Are you new Jurassic Park, or you like all the Jurassic Parks? Because I watched the first new Jurassic Park and I liked it.
Yeah.
Never got around to watching the second or third one because they seem a little bit. I don't know. I don't know if I enjoy
Yeah.
that.
The original trilogy is like by far the best, my favorite. Jurassic World was very enjoyable, like very blockbustery. And I liked the second new one, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. I liked it, but with time it kind of faded on me. And then
Yeah, right.
controversial opinion, I guess, but I did not like the new one at all. The one that came out like 2 summers ago.
I haven't watched it yet. I haven't watched
I
it
didn't like it at all. But like there's this part of me that just likes it anyway because it has dinosaurs in it. Like, it
yet.
doesn't take much to impress me, to be honest. But
Well, Jurassic Park I can watch anytime. Jurassic Park is like a classic. I can
oh
watch
my
it.
gosh, so good.
It's
Gosh, that
still
movie
good either. Yeah, he's like so practical effects and everything. But
right.
Rachel, I want to ask you a question, and I don't know
Mhm.
if you're prepared for it. But what is next for you? Like, what is next? That is, you
Fuck. I mean, I love my job here. I love it a lot. So at the time, like at this time, I don't know. I'm gonna be here until they make me leave, which I don't foresee happening. So maybe I'll retire from here. I don't know. Mm,
mean, you started at 24. You can retire
yeah,
like at
I
50.
know. And as my life has shown me, sometimes I move around.
Right.
I definitely foresee myself being here for a couple years at least. And maybe my mom and I will want to move somewhere. She loves the beach. Like when I moved down here from Missouri, everyone in my family was like, yeah, her mom's going to go down there too because like my mom just really likes the beach and the weather. So maybe my mom and I will want to move like towards the coast. I could see that happening. But I don't really have a plan and that's okay. I'm secure here and I love my job and that's all that anybody can really ask for. So we'll just see.
All right. Rachel, do you have anything you want to add to our audience before we close for today? This has been an interesting and wonderful conversation. I think we can take a lot from it. But is there anything you want to close with before we wrap it up?
Maybe just kind of harp on like the lessons I've learned, like be prepared, but also it's impossible to be prepared for every possible situation. So do what you can, but at the same time, just be ready emotionally to adapt. And I'll use like me getting fired from the zoo as an example. Yeah, I cried for 3 straight days. 3 straight days. And then I was like, all right, let's do this. And I think that's a really like good way to think about it. Like you can be sad. Like it's not that it happens. Like it's okay to be sad. Like my whole entire world was rocked. And so it's valid of me to be not okay for a little while, but then you just got to keep going. Use your resources. For me, that was, people who I was connected with from college. I called them up and asked them for advice and their references for me. And so I just want to harp on that. Be prepared, but also be emotionally prepared that things might not go the right way. And you'll be fine. As long as you do what you need to do, you'll be fine.
And
That's
that
what
is
I'll
how we will wrap this conversation up with Rachel Reed, academic advisor for the School of English Humanities. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation. And it was really enjoyable. And Rachel, I want to thank you for being on our Maverick Voices podcast in our season 1. And I look forward to hearing more from you in the future. Maybe we'll have a follow-up episode in a couple of years and see what
ooh,
you're thinking about.
okay.
So I want to thank Rachel again. This is the Maverick Voices podcast. Be on the lookout for our next episode. And I hope you enjoy our podcast with Rachel.
Bye.
Bye.